Hi, Reiki here. This time I've decided to do one of the pictures from one of my own coloring in books that I'm currently selling on Amazon as a soft copy, but you can also buy it as a PDF on Etsy. I've put a link into the description. This one I called Indian Giver from the old 60s or 50s song, Indian Giver. Love that song. Anyway, I tried to do something different this time. So by only using different shades of brown and a little bit of black, and then I used copper leaf to put into the background, which was kind of tricky because I don't use copper leaf a lot, but I'm really proud of the way it came out. So let's jump right in.
Doing this picture was a little bit daunting, especially because I don't normally use copper leaf in any of my pictures. I don't work with it often, and I wanted to use this in the background. Another thing is what made it a little bit daunting is I only wanted to use shades of brown. And in order to do that, I needed to come up with a color that sets the skin tone different from the background, copper bronze / brown background. I started off by using a light yellowish tinted brown, using my Colleen's as usual, but it was a little bit too yellow for my taste, so I lightly went over it with a reddish brown just to smooth out some of the yellow. I didn't want it. I didn't want it to be too red, and I also didn't want it to be too yellow. Now, the first picture that I tried drawing or tried coloring in came out a total flop. So I had to stop. Normally I say, just keep going, it might work out fine, but everything was wrong. I put in the shadows at the wrong places. She looked angry, she looked yucky. There was nothing pretty about her. So I said, no, 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 start over. And I started playing around with the browns, and I said, concentrate now. Make sure you put the shadows in the right place. The cheekbones shouldn't be too high. The brow shouldn't be too frowned or furrowed. I don't know the right word, but something like that. And I think I used, for the skin color, I used 4 different browns. The first layer was the light yellowish brown, and then I went over it with a slightly reddish tinted brown, and then an even darker brown, and then finally a very dark brown to add to the shadows. I also used a tiny little bit of black in there, and then I decided, yeah, this doesn't look too bad. It still looks a little bit yellowish, but actually when I did the brown background, the yellow tint didn't come out that bad. So yeah, okay. I wasn't too satisfied, but as it turned out, it actually made for a very nice picture. This time I wanted it to be super smooth, so I did use my white pencil to go over it to blend it in properly, pressing quite hard, and that made tiny little lines, shiny lines on the paper where I stopped and where I started again. So in order to smooth that out, I just used my finger again. I love using my finger. I think the natural oils help smooth it out a little bit better without making it too oily, and it just feels better for me than a paper, but you can of course use any method you want. My little girl said to me that the arm looks wooden, so maybe that was a little bit of a flop. I didn't want it to look wooden, but I didn't think it turned out that bad. But she always has a point. She's my best and my worst critic. By all means, guys, leave me a note if you think there's some place I could have improved or some place I could have made better. I am very open to some healthy critique. To make the dress and the armbands, I needed to blend a different kind of brown because it had to stay. I hate my, I hate the way I talk. I wanted it to stand apart, that is the correct phrase, of the skin color. So I made it a little bit more of a reddish brown, and also used the very, very dark brown to put in the shadows so that you can see where the the dress rounds out. I didn't want it to be a flat picture, like a flat creature. I wanted it to, you could see like almost like a 3D effect, which means putting in the right shadows at the right place. Like for instance, if you draw a hand, if you don't put the shadows in where the folds of the hand is, the hand looks flat. It's got no depth to it. So shadows is key, people. Shadows is key. I even put in a little shadow there at the top of the dress because I wanted her boobs to pop. I wanted everybody to say, hey, look, she's got boobs. Yeah, okay, that's maybe not exactly what I wanted to do. It's close enough. I wanted to see a very distinct cleavage and also making it like a 3D effect. Then I went over it with a white pencil and then using my finger just to blend it in and to smooth it in a little bit more, because if you press really hard with a white pencil, yeah, it leaves those little shiny marks. I'm sorry if you can hear me sniffing in the background. I've got a little bit of a cold. I don't feel too well. Hopefully it doesn't reflect in any of the pictures that I'm doing. But this too shall pass, eh? For the armbands and the headband, once again I went a step up and made it a little bit darker brown because I wanted it to be set apart, and that's what I did with the headband too. I gave this picture the name Indian Giver because it reminded me of that old song, that 50-60 songs, Indian Giver. I forgot who sang it. I'm sure I can Google it though. Maybe I must Google it. She said the song goes, Indian Giver, you took the love you gave to me. Indian Giver, give back the love you gave to me. I'm not going to sing because, trust me, you do not want to hear my singing voice. It sucks with a capital S. Not even in the shower. I love music and I love to sing, but no, not even nice in my own ears. Not to mention anybody else's ears. I wouldn't suffer you like that. When I made the hair, I didn't want to make it a raven black because I wanted the brown colors to be the main colors, but I also wanted it extra dark, so I started off by putting in the highlights of the reddish brown in the hair and going over a little bit darker, and then at the very end put in black. I left little spaces open where the actual white highlights should be, instead of using a gel pen at the end of when the picture is done. I don't normally do that either because I believe that the page should be colored in fully. There should be no white pieces of page sticking out. But it worked out rather well with the hair because when I blended the hair, it did go over the paper, so there wasn't actual white paper sticking out, but it was white enough that you could see distinct highlights. And with the feathers, I also mainly concentrated on the outlines, trying to make the feathers look as soft as possible. I also left a little bit white, and then of course I blended it in. I used the dark brown on the lips, and then I wanted to make the face and the eyes a little bit more defined, which is why I used some black shadowing in it. The dream catcher was tricky because, yes, I didn't want it to look like a cutout picture just being stuck there. I wanted it to have a little bit of an authentic look, and because the strings were so thin, it is so much easier to just make one solid color into the strings. But because I wanted this picture to be relatively realistic, I did use 2 different shades of brown in the tiny little strings to make sure that there is also highlights and shadows in the strings. So once again, it doesn't look like just a flat picture. The beads, I also used the brown. Well, I used the brown for everything, so I don't need to keep saying that. The feathers for the bottom part of the feathers, I used a brick red brown. Also pressing kind of hard in certain areas and then a little bit lighter in other areas. And for the top part of the feathers I used the black, because I don't know, it just made sense to me in my head at the time. Don't trust everything that goes on in my head. Sometimes my head is not where it's supposed to be, but I thought it didn't come out too badly. For the background, I didn't want to spend too much trouble on the background because I wanted to use the copper leaf that I don't normally put in, but as I put in the acrylic gloss glaze to use as an adhesive for the copper leaf, I actually know that if you don't do it solid, when you pull the copper leaf off, that it leaves little pieces open where you didn't put the gloss in totally. So I first did want to go the background over with different shades of brown. I used 3 different shades of brown and a little bit of black in the corners just to make it a little bit more refined. But I didn't even smooth it out properly. It's really just there to make sure that there is a cover on it before I use the copper leaf. I made it a little bit dark on the sides to give the picture a little bit more of a 3D effect, as if there's shadows, and then I blended it in with my finger a little bit. I used my black fine liner to define some of the lines, no hard lines in the entire picture, but I did want to use it just here and there, especially making fine black streaks in the hair to make the hair look a little bit more realistic, and then also to define the eyes and the lips a little bit more so that the picture has more depth to it. I hope I succeeded in that. I don't always get what I want, but sometimes it works out for the better, hopefully. This is the ink I used. It's what is the name of this ink? It just says Art Spectrum, concentrated artist ink. It's a copper color, and it's the same kind of ink that you would normally use in a calligraphy pen. I used a very, very fine brush. I think the brush is a 0.02 size brush. I just dipped it into the ink and just went over some of the lines in the inside the dream catcher, inside the eyes, on the lips, and a little bit in the hair, because I don't want the copper leaf to just be on the background and then there's no copper inside of the picture to round it out. Hence I used the copper ink in the inside of the picture on the girl itself and the dream catcher itself to round it out a little bit more. This is the picture that I used, that I first tried out, and it came out a total flop, but it came in handy because now I could cut it out nicely to use it as a shield when I put in a little bit of copper spray paint, normal non-rusting spray paint that you can buy at any store. Just sprayed a little bit on the background, not solid, but only soft sprays to help define the background a little bit more. I just added some brown inside again because I realized that the background inside the dream catcher was a little bit too light and I had to put it in. Then I used an acrylic gloss glaze medium to add my copper leaf. So I just marked off where I was going to put the copper leaf, and then I painted it quickly, and then I blew it on, a soft blow. As you can see, I also didn't make it solid, just a little bit closer to the girl, and then towards the ends of the page I just made little lines so it's not a solid color, and then I pressed the copper leaf down. I didn't want to put it in all over the place, just here and there. Most of it concentrated on the left side of the girl, and then a little bit inside the dream catcher and a little bit on the other side. Waited for it to dry. I waited 2 days for it to dry, just to be on the safe side, because I don't like to, I didn't leave any room for mistakes. So, and then I just used my black fine liner to define a little bit more of the dream catcher, so that the copper that went over the lines a little bit, didn't make too much of a mess of it. The little pieces of copper I saved that I took off. Then I used a clear spray paint, ultra cover, gloss clear, normal spray paint that I use as a medium over, so it doesn't rub off, and that made a nice glossy seal for it that didn't mess it up at all. So I was happy with that outcome, and there it is. She's all done. I hope you enjoyed this video. I've put in the links to my coloring in book if you want to check it out. But I had fun doing this, and I hope to be doing more of it. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Bye, everybody.